All right. Well, I'd like to say good morning to everyone. We're going to be studying the 1260 days of the church in the wilderness. Now, I talked about this about 9 years ago, and it was one of the videos that got the most views on my YouTube channel. So, it got nearly 200 views. And I would say a lot of things different than I would 10 years ago. We all study, grow, and learn. And the Lord leads us to understand things a little better. And it was that reason alone that led me to talk about this again this Lord's Day. Now, at least in the churches of Christ that we've been associated with, I've never heard anybody teach this, and a lot of them got a lot of different views. But good news is we don't require everyone to agree with us here to be brothers here. Now, they may require it other places, but we don't do that. And so what I try to do is show you what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it. And I've always, I learned from Alexander Campbell, he always used to talk about how if we could only just look at the Bible as it just fell from heaven. And what that means is you got to shut out all the doctrines of men and the preacher books and all of that, and you got to look at the scriptures as if it's brand new and you just got it. What would you think if no one was messing with your mind? And that's what I always wanted to do in studying the scriptures. And of course, when you do that and when you're open to it, the Lord will lead you. He will show you things. And so He has led me and showed me some things about this wilderness period. And so I want to talk to you about it today. Well, we're going to introduce it just by talking about this 1260 days in the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel. It talks about a 1260 days and a 3.5 year period and a 42-month period and a times and a half a time period, which is just another sneaky way of saying 3.5. Time, singular, times 2.5, that's 3.5. And so what we want to say first of all is that 1260 days is 3.5 years, is 42 months, which is the 3.5 that he's talking about. And how do we know that all this is the same? Because these are the time periods that are used in the book of Daniel and in the book of Revelation that leads up to the tribulation and ultimately the second coming of Jesus. Now, Alexander Campbell was post-millennial. I know that's not right from reading the book of Revelation. I know it's not right. And we got people in the Church of Christ that are millennial. They think all this could be in the past, which is just silly, because Revelation, the first prophecy in the book, is Jesus is coming in the clouds, and the last prophecy in the book, in the last chapter, is He's coming, and everything in between is about Him coming and what happens leading up to His coming. And so what I would like for you to see is that when He's talking to the churches in Asia, He's telling them, hold what you have till I come. He's telling them He's coming. We'll look at one of those today. And whenever He's talking about the seals being open, well, people in the church are always reading from the sixth seal all the time, talking about His coming. But they won't just admit that He's coming in the sixth seal. When it talks about people in the caves that are hiding and crying for the rocks to fall on them, people use it all the time to talk about His coming. They're not being true to the scriptures when they won't admit that it's in the sixth seal that happens. Well, guess what? At the seventh trumpet, when it sounds, it says all the kingdoms of the world become His. And so He comes in the sixth seal, the seventh trumpet, and then when the wrath is poured out, the 7 vials of wrath, what happens? What happens in Revelation 16? Behold, I come as a thief. When all the kings... It's invisible. It's invisible to all the students in the Church of Christ that He's coming. And so when all the kings of the earth are gathered together in the valley of Gedi against Israel, He says, behold, I come as a thief. It's right there in Revelation 16. And then we get to chapter 19, He's coming with His whole army. Chapter 20, He's already created a new earth and we're living in it. And the marriage supper of the Lamb is in chapter 20. You want to tell me that all this is in the past? It is the most silly of silliness that I've ever heard of. The marriage supper of the Lamb in the past? That's blindness, brothers. That is real thick blindness. Okay? And so I want you to just see that this period in this introduction is leading up to that this 1260 days is the tribulation period, but it's leading up to the second coming of Christ. So this is the number of the days. The tribulation is 1260 days, which is 42 months, which is this time and a half of time that's talked about in Daniel and Revelation. He uses this every time he talks about the tribulation. It's the length of the time that Satan has to build his kingdom. Now, you want to know the significance of that? Jesus had 3.5 years to build his kingdom. He began his ministry when he was 30 years old. He was crucified when he was 33 and a half. Satan it's given to him 3.5 years to build his kingdom. And at the end of that 3.5 years, Jesus comes with his army and with the saints and destroys it. That's why Satan and the fallen ones are cast to the earth. Jesus is coming for war. They're being cast to the earth so they can be killed. Once they're in our dimension, they can be killed. And when they're killed, they go to the eternal prison. You know, this is where they go. But that's what the final battle's about, is that. Why would Jesus come with his own army if there's no fight? None of that makes any sense. So Satan is cast to the earth. He builds his kingdom. And there's a remnant church that is hidden in that tribulation time that's preserved for that final battle. Now, what about the 7-year thing? I'm not denying that there's 7 years. Okay, I am denying that the verse that they use for 7 years has anything to do with any tribulation. That whole thing from Daniel about the covenant. Look, they're taking a verse about Jesus and making it about the Antichrist. He says that he'll confirm the covenant for 1 week, and in the middle of the week he would be killed. And that's what happened. Jesus preached 3.5 years. He got killed. And then the Spirit poured out on the house of the Cornelius. And the gospel was offered to the Gentiles for the first time 3.5 years after his death. That's confirming the covenant for 7 years. With the Jews, then with the Gentiles. Okay? But there's another verse that has nothing to do with this confirming the covenant. When Magog happens, it says that they will gather bones for 7 years. That shows from Magog to the end of this 7-year period, they're gathering bones. And that's why it ends in 7 years. Okay? That's why. And so there is a doctrine about 7 years. All I am saying is that the tribulation is only 3.5 of it. That's all I'm saying. You can believe what you want to about the other 3.5. Okay? What I was shown, it was kind of a wilderness march period. Because there is a testing who's going to the new earth, who's not. Okay, that's what I was shown about that. All right. So anyway, we'll move on and begin to look at what Daniel saw. And what we'll do is we'll take only the Scripture and nobody's opinion, nobody's preacher book, and we're just going to look and see what it says. Okay. All right. This is Daniel's vision of the last days before the second coming. All right, and we're saying all that because all of that is in here. Okay? And so in Daniel 7, verse 15, it says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. Now we're going to start in verse 15 because the angel explains what he saw, and we don't have to go back and read everything he saw because we'll just look at the explanation of what he saw. What he saw was 4 kingdoms. So we're going to just go with that. All right? And so he says, I came near unto one of them, and he's talking about one of the angels that was showing him, that stood by and asked him of the truth of all this. So he told me, and he made me to know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts, which are 4 kings. So he's telling them what he saw. He saw 4 great beasts. And we'll look at what those beasts were on the next slide or so. But he said he saw these 4 beasts, and he says these are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom. Now, as soon as he says these evil kingdoms are rising, he's going to talk about the persecution of the saints, but he wants you to know the end result. He's saying, no matter what happens with these beasts, the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever and ever. So he jumps to the millennial time, and he's saying that in the end, it is the saints that have the kingdom. And so the devil right now, I'm telling you, he's promising people a kingdom. And that's what this whole New World Order is all about. There's deep and dark secrets with governments. And their technology, it's fallen angel technology. And they know how to communicate with their God just like we know how to communicate with ours. All right? And so he's saying that the devil's promising them 1,000-year reign with no Christians. But Jesus is saying that's not the way it's going to go down. He's going to have his 3.5 years. Then he's going to be defeated and the saints are going to possess the kingdom. So the devil just got a counterfeit of everything that God's got. Okay? And that's what that is. That's his counterfeit millennium. Okay? And even it's on record that Hitler was using those lost arts to communicate with the fallen ones and familiar spirits. And he was promised 1,000-year reign. And that's why he was focused upon ridding the world of all the Jews. See, the fallen angels always need something for what they give you. See, so they needed the Jews. They needed the death of the Jews. Okay? And so he said that the saints are going to possess the kingdom. This is the end result, the millennial time. And then he said, I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails were of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces and stamped with the residue of his feet. Now this fourth kingdom is the 10-horned beast that John saw. So he's seeing not the first coming of Jesus, but the second coming of Jesus and what led up to it. That's what Daniel's seeing. Because John saw the same thing. As a matter of fact, Daniel in his vision saw John on one side of the river and himself on the other side of the river, and saw John asking a question to the angel that stood on the river, and he wrote down the answers of what he heard. So they had all this time apart. They were having the same. He was seeing John in the future, having the same vision. And we'll look at that too today. That'll be a little part of what we look at. So he would know the truth of the fourth beast, see? And so this fourth beast is the 10-horned beast, which is what prevails. Now look, just like for everybody to open their eyes and look, see what's going on. Now you got to get to some alternative news to even know what's going on. You can't watch ABC and NBC because that's just a propaganda machine, for Satan himself. But right now, I can tell you that China and Russia and Iran and North Korea have aligned, and they're saying they're going to have the control of the New World Order. And the United States and Europe and Israel, which they want to throw under the bus, has aligned, and they're saying we're going to be in charge of the New World Order. Okay? Now these countries, except for the U.S., are elements of the old Roman Empire. They was just divided into East and West. So what you have is the East saying, we're going to run the New World Order, and the West saying, we're going to run the New World Order. And so there's a big war coming, and that's what the war is all about. That's what it's all about. Ukraine is nothing but a distraction. NATO was already in there setting up stuff. That's why Russia invaded it. And so if you look at Europe and Russia, Ukraine's like this big ball in the middle of the two. Ukraine goes way into Europe and it goes way into Russia. See? So the fight over Ukraine is a fight to rule the world. It's just not a fight over that country. See? It's a fight between NATO and Russia. Ukrainians, they were bled out a long time ago. That's NATO in there. So there will be war. The seals are going to be opened, and this will be the source of it. And so this 10-horned beast, I don't know which side it is. We'll know as soon as we see who's going to rule it. That's when we'll know. There's arguments for the Eastern and the Western Empire to be the New World Order, to be the 10-horned beast. I saw Walid Shabbat talk. He was a Muslim turned Christian. He was making a case for the 10-horned beast being Islamic. And I would hate to have been debating him because he knew his stuff. So, I don't know. I don't know which way it'll go. I just know there's going to be a 10-horned beast. And I know that Christians aren't allowed. That's what I know. Okay? But God has called the end from the beginning. And he's already thought through all that. He's already has a plan for all that. And the plan still ends with Satan losing. And he goes to a bottomless pit. That's another thing. Going to a bottomless pit, chained up for 1,000 years. How can you ever put that in the past? When have Christians not been persecuted since Jesus? And when has Satan not been the ruler of this world since Jesus? There is a day coming that Jesus is going to rule and he's out. You can't, this amillennial view is just stupid. It's a blindness that I can't even understand. You know, and I heard of some brethren trying to discuss it, and people, they're so militant in their opinions that they, you know, and one of them was trying to prove the Amen of Lu was true with one or two verses out of Revelation. And somebody said, well, if you're right, Satan's changed too long. It's funny, but it's true. He would have to be able to come out of his pit and rule the world and go back in it, because he's ruling it. So it's just a bunch of silliness. Let all that go. So this is the fourth beast were the future of John's day. These are the four beasts that were future to John's day. So we're just showing that in Daniel 7 he saw a lion-like beast, a bear-like beast, a leopard-like beast, and a 10-horned beast. John saw this beast with the mouth of a lion, the feet of a bear, like unto a leopard, having 10 horns. And so whatever these beasts were that were arising in the earth, they kind of coalesced into one beast, having this 10 horns in John's vision. But it's the same 10-horned beast that Daniel saw, John saw, future his day. And so we can see that this beast he saw is not in the past. We can see that John saw this beast in the future. It's the same beast. And when we look at Revelation 13, for example, we see this beast has one ideal. It's to turn everybody away from Jesus to worship the dragon. Now in Revelation 12, it says the dragon was Satan himself. Satan, that old serpent, which is the devil. That's what it says in Revelation 12. The dragon, this new world order, Satan is going to be worshipped. And Christians are going to lose their influence in the world during that 3.5 years. Okay? So it says in 13 verse 4 and 5, and they worshiped the dragon which gave the power to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who's able to make war with him? So they have confidence in Satan and what Satan is building. But these are people that don't love the Lord or will take the mark just to be fed because they don't have a relationship with Jesus. They don't trust him. They don't have any reason to believe he's going to feed them. They just get the mark to get the food. And so they're saying, who can make war with them? You know, there's people that are believing that Satan's going to win. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. So this thing is completely antichrist in nature. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. So that's the 42 months that Satan has to rule. He's got the same 3.5 years Jesus has. He's going to build something really evil that hates Christians. Okay? And so we're just pointing out that when Jesus came the first time, he established a spiritual kingdom. But when the seventh trumpet sounds, something else is going to happen. A physical kingdom is coming into play. Because all the kingdoms of the world become his. That's what the Bible says. And it says he will rule 1,000 years. Okay? So something else is coming. Something new is coming. Okay? So in Revelation 13 verse 6 and 7, it says, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, and blasphemed his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given unto him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. So this beast is going to rule the known world. Okay? So this lesson is going to be about what's God's plan for the Christians that are in a right relationship with him during this time. There is a plan, and it's a good plan. And you need to know about the plan. Okay? Now, we're going to look at the fourth beast kingdom and how that was going to be a sign of his coming. Even Daniel saw that. It would be time of Jesus coming and creating his own kingdom. It would be that time. Daniel was talking about his second coming in chapter 7 and just jumping right over his first coming. Okay? And we'll show that. Okay? And so in verse 20 it says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the others which came up, the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell. So there's 10 horns in the beginning. There's one that uproots 3. Even that horn that had eyes and a mouth speaking great things, whose look was more stout than his fellow. So whatever this little horn is, it has influence and power over the 10-horned beast. Okay? And a lot of people say that is the Antichrist. Well, it'll be someone with the Antichrist spirit. Call him the Antichrist. I'm good with that. I don't care. You know, it could be the false prophet, the Antichrist. They could be one and the same. Some people say they're two. I'm not going to argue about all that. I just want to look at what the scriptures say. This horn rises up, uproots 3. And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints. So whatever this horn is, it's an influence coming up that starts the war with the saints. It starts the persecution with the saints. And it prevails against the saints. And it says this will go on with this 10-horned beast for these 42 months until the Ancient of Days came. And judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And at that time, the saints possessed the kingdom. So at the end of the 3.5 years, Jesus is coming for blood with his whole army. He calls it an army. In Revelation 19, it's called an army. He's not coming with nothing to kill. He's killing what Satan built. That's what he's coming to kill. The fallen ones with everyone that fallen. And if you can hear it from the book of Jude, the Lord's coming with both angels and saints against that army. They're going to fight together alongside each other. Fallen angels against Satan's children, God's children, and the faithful angels together against what Satan built. That's just what the scriptures say. People don't talk about it because it seems too fantastic, and they don't want to be judged. I already know this is what's going to happen. Okay? The Lord has reached out to me on this already. This is what's going to happen. All right? So, this 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms. And he shall devour the whole earth and tread it down and break it to pieces. And so this 10-horned beast, it's given into his hand to rule the world, to have all the kingdoms under it, all of them, whatever's left. Whoever gets control of the New World Order. It will be anti-Christian in nature, and it will break down all the resistance and become the 10-horned beast. All right? Now, the 3.5 year reign of the false prophet. So here we got in chapter 7, verse 24, same chapter. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings, and they shall arise. And another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and wear out the saints. And this word wear out, it's used in a mental sense to afflict, to wear out. And I'm just saying, I just want to know what that word meant. That's what it means. To wear them out, okay? It'll wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand unto this times, and the dividing of time. So there's that time period that we keep alluding to, that's throughout the book of Revelation, throughout the book of Daniel. Okay. But the judgment shall sit. He always keeps saying, "Look, this is going to happen, but this is how it ends." But the judgment shall sit, and they, the Lord's army, shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. So this is just millennial language, right out of Revelation 20. This is how it ends. Okay? And I remember trying to talk to a Church of Christ one time about working together. And they had a wrong view of prophecy. And they wouldn't even work with me because I believed there was going to be a 1,000-year period. They didn't want to work with me. And I just told one of the elders there, 7 times in Revelation 20, it says there's going to be 1,000 years. 7 times. And you sit here and tell me there's not. They just got quiet. The discussion kind of ended, and I went my way. It's a blindness. That's what it is. A blindness that I can't understand. It's like people love their doctrines and the people who taught it to them more than they love the Scriptures. They don't want to see it, and they won't see it. Time of trouble before his second coming. So in Daniel 12, verse 1 through 10, this is what he says. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince that standeth up for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble. Now this is the 3.5 period time that we're talking about. But he also shares with us something else that's also in Revelation 20. He said there'll be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. The tribulation is called the Great Tribulation in Revelation. And it is a time of great trouble the world has never seen. And at that time thy people shall be delivered. So there is a people at the time of this trouble that are going to be delivered. And this is why we're talking about the 1260 days of the church in the wilderness. And it says, everyone that is found written in the book, everyone that's in a right relationship with him is delivered in this time. And he says something else, that many, not all, but many that are asleep in the dust are going to arise from the dead. They're going to wake. Some to everlasting life, some to everlasting contempt. So there's going to be some people brought out of the grave, but it's not everybody, it's many. And this is the first resurrection talked about here. It's clearly laid out in Revelation 20. And they that shall be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament. So this is talking about, in this time, some of God's people will begin to shine, so that people will know who God has chosen to carry the truth to them. It's a time where God is making big moves. So people will begin to shine here. It's also in in Isaiah 60, that people are going to begin to shine. Okay? And they shall turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. So there's a harvest time in this time. There are people that are not in a right relationship with God. They are Laodicean in their characteristics. And they are not gathered together and protected like the church in the wilderness, because the relationship wasn't good. In that time, many are going to start repenting. And those that he has chosen that are shining will run rescue missions in that time. And these people will be shining, like it says there. Okay? But Daniel is just told by the angel that this is for the time of the end. The words and the understanding of it are shut up until it's time. And then people will begin to be able to understand it. And he says in that time many will go to and fro, knowledge will be increased in the land. So when we look about this many of people coming out of the dead, in Revelation 20 verse 5 and 6 it says, and the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. He's talking about a resurrection at the beginning of the 1,000 years. Say, at this tribulation time that Daniel talked about. And he says, blessed and holy is he that hath part in this first resurrection. Everybody doesn't have a part. It's like he says, that the rest of the dead the rest of the dead live not again till the 1,000 years were finished. So this is a partial resurrection. And so he says that blessed and holy is he that has part in this resurrection. On such the second death hath no power, and they shall be priests of God and Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. And so there's a partial resurrection at the beginning of this 1,000 years. The rest of the dead don't come out of the grave until the end of the 1,000. All right? So they're who he chose. Now this is the vision I was talking about. How long the devil has to build his kingdom and the church is hidden. So in Daniel chapter 12 verse 5, if we continue to look at that book where we're reading from, he says, I Daniel looked, and behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the river, the bank of a river, and the other on the other bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in fine linen, which was upon the waters of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard a man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he had held up his right hand and his left hand towards heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever and ever, it shall be for a time and a half a time. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the people, scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. So he's talking about this time that Satan has to conquer. And so outside of these areas where people are gathered into safety, he is ruling. He is building his kingdom. And so out there the power is scattered. But where they are, they're walking in power. And I will show you that. The saints are walking in power. And so in Revelation 10, this is the match for that. And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea. So he saw him standing upon this water. And he saw two people, one on one side of the bank, one on the other. I believe Daniel was one on one side of the bank, and John was the one on the other side of the bank of the river. And I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth, lifted up his hand towards heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, who created heaven and the things therein, the things that therein are, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things that are therein, that there should be time no longer. So just like he said here, that, how long shall these things be? And he said there should be time no longer. This is what the angel is saying, that this is the answer, that it is finished, like he said over here. So we're just pointing out that and we'll do some matchups in a moment, but this is what he says. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, now this is when the kingdoms of the world are to become his, when he begins to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he had declared to his servants the prophets. And that's what he declared to Daniel over here, see. And so when we look at chapter 11, verse 15, we've been talking about this verse. The seventh angel sounded, and there was voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of the world are become the kingdoms of our Lord. So now his kingdom is not just spiritual, it's become physical. They become the kingdoms of his Lord and his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever to the end of the new world, the new earth. Okay? So we're just looking at the two. One's Daniel and one's John. And one of these, he said, in this vision, asked the angel upon the river. He's asking the angel that's standing upon the river, say. And when we get down here, then he says that the angel swear by him that liveth forever and ever. It will be for a time and a half of times. Then we see that this is where he answered, and swear by him that liveth forever and ever, who created the earth, the sea, what have you, that there should be time no longer. So this 3.5 years, at the end of that, then it's time for this first world to end, and for a new world, a new earth to begin. And I know that generates questions, and I know the answer to some of those questions. That well, how on earth will Jesus rule here if it's going to be burned and melted with fervent heat? Well, the saints are lifted up, and whenever he saw New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, that's the saints. It says that the New Jerusalem was like a bride adorned for her husband. Now, Jesus didn't come to marry no city; he come to marry the church. And we know that the Bible teaches that New Jerusalem is the church, which is the mother of us all. This is pictured as the bride of Christ coming down out of heaven to the new earth. And so they are lifted up for the church, for the world to be melted and recreated into a new earth. And then the bride comes down to the new earth, just like John saw. Okay? And so this is the plan for that. Okay? And this is what Daniel saw. This is what John saw. And so the wise will recognize the times. If we continue to read a little further in Daniel 12, it says, and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O Lord, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. And he says, many will be purified and made white and tried. So this is a lot of the trials that people are going through as we're approaching this tribulation period. But I can guarantee you that the troubles, Paul even wrote about it to Thessalonians. It's a sign to you who are troubled, to rest with us. That God is testing and trying, and he's making choices for the things to come. And he's saying that many are going to be tried, but the wicked will do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand what's going on, but the wise will understand the times whenever it gets close. And that's what Daniel was saying. Okay? Now, we're going to get into the remnant church, which is what I want to talk about this far. It's why I believe it got 1,200. Why I got 200 views is because I think people are being awakened to this. I think the Lord is awakening them to this, and they're getting interested and they're searching. So a lot of the people that would watch this video would be people that have been alerted to this coming event, and they're searching. What is this about? Okay? Because I can tell you the Lord is the master of riddles. He'll show you something, and it's up to you to figure out what it is. And we got a lot of riddles to crack in this last part of this study. These riddles are hard, but I believe I can explain them to you. But they're hard. And he's got ways of making them hard. Like talking about the first coming and the second coming in together. He did that in Isaiah 61, didn't he? Even the chosen picked up on that. Whenever he was handed the book of Isaiah to read, when Jesus was handed the book of Isaiah, he only read some of stopped in the middle of verse 2 there and handed it back to the master and said, this day is this verse fulfilled in your ears. Well, the reason why he did that is because everything else that he stopped reading was his second coming, not his first coming. See? And The Chosen, he picked up on that and even had him explain it. Why did you stop reading the middle of verse 2? He said, because the rest is for later. That's what they said in that movie, if you saw it. See? And I was happy that they picked up on that. And so what Jesus read, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good things to the meek, He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and open the prisons to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. And that's where he stopped, handed it back to the master of the house. See? But the next verse is, in the day of vengeance. That's when he comes back the second time. So he left here crucified and beaten. He's not coming back that way. He's coming back with an army. So the day of vengeance of our God, and to comfort all that mourn, to point to them that mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes. In one sense, Zion can be the church, yes. But in Zechariah 12, 13, and 14, Israel fights all the way to the day that Jesus descends to the Mount of Olives. And they don't even know who He is. He shows them His hands. And they say, what is this wounds in thy hands? He said, this is where I was wounded in the house of my friends. They don't even know who He is. But they are fighting in Jerusalem and losing to the point that Jesus descends. And in chapter 14 of Zechariah, it says that all the armies coming against Israel are disintegrated. It says they turn to ashes while they stand on their feet and their tongues dissolve in their mouth and their eyes in their sockets. They fight all the way until He returns. But the church in the wilderness does not do that. They're in a special place, and we're going to study about that today, okay? So the remnant church is gathered to a place prepared of God in the wilderness. And we're going to start to study that. So he'll talk about the first and second coming together just like Isaiah 61. And I will show that to you. I'll explain it to you. In verse 1 it says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and her head a crown of 12 stars. Now I can tell you right now that the sun is God the Father, and the moon is the mother of the church. And so she's clothed in God's light, and the church is the reflection of God's light. And the 12 stars are the 12 apostles. Now, there are doctrines out there trying to make this Israel. They want this to be Israel. They fight and are vicious about it being Israel. But it's not Israel. Israel fights all the way to the last day. And this church, this whole message is to a church that is gathered to a place prepared and fed of God during the whole tribulation period. That does not happen to them. They fight. And there's a reason why they fight. And it's because whenever he was being led up before Pilate, and they all said, let his blood be upon us and our children, Father heard it. And so what we got here is these symbols, the sun, the moon, and the stars. And we'll show that this woman is the church, clothed in the light of God, crowned with the light of the 12 apostles. That's what we'll show, okay? So the meaning of the symbols, the sun, moon, and stars. So for example, in Revelation 1, verse 16 and 20, we can see, this is from a modern version, it says, in his right hand were 7 stars. This from chapter 1, verse 16 and 20. In his right hand were 7 stars. Out of his mouth came a sharp two-edged sword. So this is a symbol, the sword being the word of God and the stars being something else. And his face was like the sun when it shines in his brightness. So this is God's light, the sunlight that she's clothed in. And the hidden meaning of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand and the 7 golden lampstands is this. The 7 stars are the messengers of the churches. So, the apostles applied this word messenger to themselves, that they were the messengers of the churches. So, this is what they are, the messengers. Now, this word messenger is used for both angel and servant here on earth. The apostles use it as pertaining to themselves, but oftentimes this word is translated angel, okay? I'm just saying, that's what is translated. So when we look at 2 Corinthians 8, for example, he talks about they are the messengers of the churches. If anybody inquire of Titus, my partner and fellow helper. So see, this word is being applied to the apostles and to their helpers. And in Genesis 37, verse 9 and 10, when Joseph had a dream and told it to his brothers, he says, I had another dream. I saw the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowing down to me. The 11 stars were his brothers. See? And so whenever his father and brothers heard it, they criticized him. And what is this dream you've had? And then Jacob said to his son, Joseph, will your mother now and your brothers come and bow down before you? So he's saying that the father was the sun, the mother was the moon, and the 11 brothers were the 11 stars. And so just like in the church, though, God is the father, the church is the mother, and the 11 stars, the 12 stars, including Joseph, would have been the apostles' say. And so we're just showing that this is what the symbols mean, so that you can apply it to what's being said in Revelation 12. And then we'll move on. All right? The light of God dimming and losing influence is a sign of His coming. So whenever Jesus said this in Matthew 24, immediately after the tribulation of those days, now we're just showing that there was a gap of time that it's not immediate to us. It may be immediate to God. But when Jerusalem was destroyed, after that, it says, after the tribulation of the AD 70, shall the sun be darkened and the moon shall not give her light. So I believe he's talking about, in a physical and a spiritual sense, that God's light is not reaching people. Gross darkness is covering the earth, like it says in Isaiah. God's light is waning, and the church's influence is waning in this time. So that's what the sun and the moon becoming dark. And it can manifest literally as a sign like it did in Egypt too. I'm not saying there won't be no physical darkness. I believe there will be. But I'm just pointing out, if we use these symbols consistently, it's also talking about God's influence waning in the earth. And He says, then the stars shall fall from heaven. Now, the stars are the angels. And so when He talks about the stars falling to earth, like in the sixth seal, that's when Satan and the fallen ones are cast to the earth. Now, Satan himself will not necessarily be like the fallen ones and be something that's killed, because he's reserved for the bottomless pit. But all the fallen ones that followed him, they will be in our dimension, and they can be killed. And that's what the final battle's about. So this is what he's saying, is that that these stars fall from heaven when the moon and the sun are darkened, and then the powers of heaven are shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. So even the Son of Man appearing in heaven is a sign, maybe even before, and then shall the tribes of the earth mourn. That looks like the sixth seal business there. And I believe that the sixth seal business, is a time before the Armageddon battle, which he comes as a thief. But then he says, and they shall see the Son of Man come in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. I think this is the Armageddon deal. See? But there's a sign of Him appearing in heaven. But in this sign it says that He shall send forth His angels, the great sound of a trumpet, and they're going to gather together His elect. Now that's what He says He's going to do in Revelation 12. He's going to send forth His angels, gather together His elect to places to be protected and fed. Now, that's what He says. He's going to gather together His elect. And so all the people that try to make Matthew 24 a revelation of the past, I just showed one of them one time, an elder in a church. I just said, when did this ever happen? When did trumpets sound? When did the angels get sent? When were the saints gathered by angels? And he just had to be honest. He said, well, let me study and I'll get back with you. And he never did, because he couldn't. You can't get back to me on that. What are you going to say? The trumpet's not going to sound? And the angels aren't going to be sent? What are you going to say? Jesus said the trumpet's going to sound and the angels are going to be sent. And they got a particular message to gather together His elect. From one end of heaven to the other. They're going to be gathered together. So, God's church's influence is waning in the world. Governments purge Jesus from all aspects of government. There's a sign of His coming and then a coming. And then sometimes the word is complex and symbols are literal and figurative. So we're talking about the spiritual and literal darkness together. It's like there was 3 days of darkness, I believe, in Egypt. Or not even sure it was 3 days. But there was a literal darkness in Egypt. Okay? So there can be a literal darkness in the earth as well. But there's also symbols here that is along with what we're studying. Now we're back to Revelation 12. the birth pains, which is the tribulation that usher in the return of Christ. The woman clothed in the sun, we're going to begin reading about her again in verse 2. She being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. Now, we know when Jesus was born, he was born from the woman of the Old Testament church. But when he returns, he's gathering the woman of the New Testament church. Because what did Moses say? That there would be a new prophet raised up like unto him, and everyone that did not accept that prophet would be cut off. That's what Moses said. So Jesus came and he preached himself the Messiah, and everyone that received that was of the first woman became part of the second woman. But there are everlasting covenants with Israel. And the Bible says plainly in Isaiah and Romans 11 that the Redeemer is going to come to Zion and turn ungodliness from Jacob, and a remnant will be saved. So that covenant's good. And that's why Zechariah told the whole story of his coming to Israel, why they're still fighting until Jesus comes. Okay? So it's not them. They got to fight. Fight to the end. Okay? So this woman is like, she's in pain to be delivered, John is seeing, and she brought forth a man-child who was to rule the nations with a rod of iron. Well, that's the millennial time. And so he just says, and her child was caught up to God into his throne. So this is what we know. Is that Jesus was born a couple thousand years ago, and he was crucified and he was caught up to God. But he's to rule the nations with a rod of iron when he returns. And so what we want to point out from this particular verse is what Isaiah says to make all this make sense, okay? There's an image here, first of all, of the tribulation period being birth pains that usher in the return of Christ. There's a picture here, okay? So when Isaiah explains it, this is what he says. A voice of the noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice from the Lord that rendereth recompense to his enemies. So this is clearly his second return, when he comes in vengeance, like we saw in Isaiah 61. Before she travailed, she brought forth, and pain came. She was delivered of a man-child. So this is what he says, is that Jesus was born, and all these birth pains are before he returns the second time. So it says the child's born, and the birth pains are later. That's what Isaiah is saying. So the birth pains are the tribulation that brings his second coming. And all of this is hidden in these few verses, talking about the first and second coming together. Just like we saw in Isaiah 61. Just like that. Now, I hope I was able to explain that well. Okay? So Jesus is born in a peaceful time for the church, and the woman having birth pains is the church before his return to render recompense. And that's what we're pointing out. Okay? Birth pains came later. Now, Revelation verse 3. The rise of the ten-horned beast signifies the second coming. So this is before he comes the second time. In verse 3 it says, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. And this red dragon is identified as Satan himself. But this red dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Now that's the beast Daniel saw. And his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven. And those are the fallen angels. Now you know how many fell with Lucifer when he rebelled. A third of the angels in heaven fell with Lucifer. His tail drew a third of them. And did cast them to the earth. And so this is where their interdimensional space is right now. But they're coming into our dimension, and he will talk about them being cast into this after a war. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered. Now he's backing back up to when Jesus was born. And it says that he stood before the woman ready to devour the child as soon as he was born. Now this is what happened in Bethlehem. And you recall that when Herod saw he was mocked, he had all the children in Bethlehem killed. That was Satan trying to get the Christ child. Okay? So he's still talking about the first and second coming together. The dragon tried to destroy him when he came the first time, but he's talking about the second time, the first and second coming together, as he talks about the rise of this ten-horned beast. He's still doing it. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule the nations with a rod of iron. This is his second coming. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne. So we're just simply showing the first and second coming are taught together to help hide the meaning of the prophecy until it's time for it to be understood. That's how he sealed up the book. You're not going to understand it without the Holy Spirit opening it up to you, okay? Daniel already put the ten-horned beast in the last 3.5 years before the coming. He already did that. So there is a remnant staying here through the tribulation and Jesus coming afterward. Now listen, while I say this, I want to clarify. I'm not saying no one's going to be evacuated. I'm not. I'm saying there's a remnant that's staying here. That's going to be his remnant army. All right? And I'm also saying there are people that are neither going to be evacuated or go to the safe zones for one or two reasons. And I can't speak for God, but my understanding right now is those reasons are they're not in a right relationship with him, number one, or number two, they're chosen for assignment outside these safe areas, these safe zones. Okay? All right. Now, having said that, I want to look at what he says here in Revelation 2, verse 25 through 28. And we're looking at there's a remnant army staying here through the tribulation and Jesus coming afterwards. So here in Revelation 2, this is a message to the last day church. I think all the churches in Revelation 2 and 3 are last days churches, because he talks about coming to all of them except Smyrna, the slaughtered church. No sense of talking to anybody that's coming if they're going to be killed. And there was a church in Smyrna that got completely annihilated and murdered by the Muslims over there, if you don't know that. So, back to this. This is what he says. This is the way he talks to one of the churches in Asia. That which ye have, hold fast till I come. This is a church that is here that has these characteristics at the time that he's coming. All right? And he that overcometh, he talks about what's good and bad in some of these churches. And he challenged them to overcome the bad in each one of these places where he talks about their good points and their bad points. He wants them to overcome. He that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him I will give power over the nations. That's again referring to the millennial time, when the kingdoms of the world are given to the saints. Okay, just like Daniel said, he's talking to them about it right here in Revelation 2. All right. And then in verse 27 it says, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. Again, he says the same thing here that we saw in Revelation 12. That Jesus is coming to rule with a rod of iron. He will be King of kings. He will choose his own. The government will be on his shoulders, like the prophet said. He will choose his own leaders. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As a vessel of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, as I have received of my Father. He's saying that all the nations of the world will be shattered. Like if you hung up a clay pot and hit it with a baseball bat, be nothing left. As a matter of fact, in Isaiah talked about the pieces of these nations being so small that you wouldn't even be able to take a piece of it and get a coal out of a fire with it because it'd be too hot. Isaiah talked about that. All right. And so he's saying that he's going to shatter the nations. He's going to give those nations, he's going to give power of the nations to his chosen. And this is what Jesus is saying he's received of his Father. And he goes on to say again, I will give to him the morning star, which is another metaphor, another symbol, because Jesus said, I, Jesus, in Revelation 22:16, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and offspring of David, the bright morning star. He's saying, I'm going to give you me. I'm coming. Just like he said up here, I'm coming. This book is about him coming and what happens up to the point he comes. The whole book is about that. Okay? All right. Jesus is coming to destroy everything Satan builds in the tribulation. So when we get to Revelation 19, it says in verse 11, and I saw heaven opened up, and a white horse, and he that sat upon it was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. And the armies which were in heaven followed him. He calls these angels coming with him armies. Jude calls them also saints. He's coming with 10,000s of his saints. Okay? So it's an army of what's coming out of heaven and what's preserved here in these safe areas called the church in the wilderness. And so the armies which followed him upon white horses are clothed in fine linen, both white and clean, and out of his mouth goes a sharp sword. With it he should smite the nations and rule them with a rod of iron. You want to know when the rod of iron is going to be in effect, when he's going to rule that way? He's telling you right here, when he comes with his own army, that's when he shatters the nations. That's when he's going to rule them. Okay? And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to go for he had some kind of invisible army come and did something and nothing's changed. That's some real blindness there. Some blindness I don't understand. Okay? And so he says, he that treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of the Almighty God. So when you're treading the winepress here, he talks about the blood coming up to the horses' bridles and all that. This is his wrath being poured out. Okay? And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So he is King of Kings. He will choose his own. His government will be on his shoulder. Okay? He's not just King of Judah anymore. All right. Revelation 19. We're going to look at the final war. Everything that's not his has got to go. And so what he says in Revelation 19 in verse 20 is the beast, the ten-horned beast, this is the ten-horned beast, was taken, and with it the false prophet that worked miracles before him, which had deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that had worshipped his image. They both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. And the remnant, this is the remnant that's not his. The remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeded out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. Literally, it's a hands-on job by Jesus and his army. Just like he said in Thessalonians, it is a righteous thing with God to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you, and to you who are troubled rest with us, when the Lord shall be revealed from heaven with his mighty angels, in flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not God, and obey not the gospel of our Lord Jesus. Everything not his has got to go before the new earth. Nothing's going to be left over. Only his, what is his, is going to the new earth. All right? Some of the church is going underground. Some of it's going to these places prepared that I've been talking to you about. So if we go back to Revelation 12, which is where we're studying about the woman in the wilderness, and start in verse 6. The woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared. A place prepared of God. That they should feed her. Now they are the angels. The angels are ministering to the church here. That they should feed her there 1,260 days. Now there's your 3.5 years, your 42 months, your time and a half of time. The woman in the wilderness, the remnant church, is hidden in this place prepared by God. The whole tribulation. And fed by God. No reason for stockpiles. No reason for any of that. They're fed of God. Okay? Stockpiles and bullets, it's the wrong idea. I'm telling you. It's not what he wants. He wants you to look to him. Trust him. Okay? And so, it says this woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared of God that he should feed her there 1,260 days. And there was war in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was place any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now this is when the stars fall from heaven. This is the sixth seal. He gathers his church right before these angels, the fallen ones, are cast down. Okay? Before the wrath. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength. Now this is the verse I want you to see the most of all the verses I'm going to read to you today. Because all of these doomsday preachers, that's not what I hope to be getting across to you today. I hope to be getting across to you that God has a really good plan for those that love him. And you're safe. And you're fed. And you're preserved. But the denominational doomsday preachers, they're preaching about the power of the beast and the mark. And of course their answer to that is everyone's going to be evacuated, but everyone's not going to be evacuated. Okay? Not everyone. And they're talking about how that you either take the mark or you die, and all the power Satan has. Well, I'm telling you, when Satan and his army is cast out, he doesn't talk about Satan's power here. He talks about the power of the saints right here. Okay? They're walking in power. And he says, I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God. So when we are preserved into these places, that's the kingdom of God, wherever we're going. That's the kingdom of God. That's the start of it. It's kind of like forts in Indian territory. This is his remnant that he's holding for the final battle, which they all lose. But this is where the kingdom of God on earth begins, is when he gathers us. Now has come the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. We are walking in the power of Christ. because the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before God day and night. He's cast down here to the earth. And of course, you know, the Bible talks about woe unto those that are in the earth, because Satan is coming down with great wrath. But that's not the remnant. The remnant is here, walking in power. And it says, and the woman, to the woman, I put these two verses together because some flee and some are given special transport by God. To the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place. That's the place prepared that we talked about, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and half a time from the face of the serpent. Wherever this woman is going, the place God prepares, Satan can't touch it. He can't go there. He can't harm anybody there. He can't touch it. They are going to a place that is from the face of the serpent. They are, for the first time, living outside his kingdom and outside his influence, outside his oppression, for the first time ever. My message to the Christian that loves Jesus and follows Jesus is, this tribulation is a really good time for the Christian. It's a really bad time for someone who has refused to answer the call. That's my word to you. Okay? That's my message. It's a really good time to be a Christian. Okay? So this right here, I covet this. I covet this plan. I want to go there. I'd leave everything for it. I'd go with clothes on my back to go there. There's nothing seems more valuable and more precious to me right now. Nothing. In my life, because of the trials that I went through, everything's gone. Except for just a few friends. A lot of them are really sick. Everything's gone. So this right here sounds good to me. And it's what I desire. Is to see this day. Okay? Now, the remnant church walk in power. So we were looking at Revelation 12. We're going to look at verse 10 now. And where we just read this. And we're going to match it to something, you know, making a point here. And so it says, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation. So now has come the salvation, strength, the kingdom of our God, power of his Christ. The accuser of brothers cast down, which accuse them for God day and night. It says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. So our walk with Jesus is our testimony. And so we have both the blood of Jesus and our testimony of our relationship with him, what he does in our lives, what he does, how he's manifested himself to us. That's my testimony. Because I stood up here many years preaching cessation doctrine, and we all knew there were people in this church that had dreams they believed that were from God. My mom was one of them, and even visions from God. And as time went on, people in the church started coming to me. I lightened up. People in the church started coming to me saying, I'm having visions. And I just listened. And one day I started having those myself, dreams and visions. June 2017 is when it started for me. And most of it has been about this. I didn't figure all this out on my own. I'm not this smart. Most of my dreams and visions are about the church being gathered. This all started with somebody else talking to me about it 10 years ago. I only started having visions 6 years ago. But I believed that the message was true, and I started studying based upon what was being seen and looking at the scriptures as they just fell from heaven, not through the doctrines of men. And everything I was told, and I began to see afterward, it's all in the Bible. You just can't look at it through somebody else's opinions and books. It's all in there. So what I'm showing you today are things that I've been shown in riddles. And if I would believe the riddle, I would get more. Okay? And so that's the way it went for me. And so as we look at this, I have a testimony. I'm sharing with you what that testimony is. And he says, therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell therein. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knoweth he had but a short time. So these people that are in the earth, that are not in these safe areas, he's saying woe to them. But he's not talking that way to us. not to the remnant. He's saying there's a place prepared for you, and I'm going to feed you there. Okay? And when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman who brought forth the man-child. And so this is of course is the church. He began to persecute the elements of those that were not in these places prepared. And it says that this woman was given this wings to go to this place prepared. So as this persecution, I guess, as it begins, that this is when we're gathered up to her. The woman is gathered up to her place. Maybe I said that backwards a minute ago. They go to this place prepared. And so we're just looking at, for this whole time and a half, this whole 3.5 year period, this whole 1,260 days, that they're walking in strength in the kingdom and the power of Christ. Saying. And that's what I'm showing. That's what the scriptures say. All right? So also, if we look at this, how can we know the woman in the wilderness is the church and it is protected? So in Revelation 12, verse 15, we see that the serpent cast a flood out of his mouth to try to get to this woman that's in this wilderness, to be carried away of the flood. But the earth helped the woman. The earth opened her mouth and swallowed the flood that the dragon cast out. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. And so now he tells us who the remnant is. So there is a people in the safe areas, the place prepared, and there is a remnant of her seed. So these are the converts. These are the people repenting. Her seed, the woman is the bride. The remnant of her seed, that's the offspring. Those are the people that are repenting. They're crying out for forgiveness. They become born again, but they don't necessarily... Everyone doesn't go to a safe place now, say. And so what he says, the dragon turned against and went after the remnant of her seed. He couldn't do anything to the woman in the wilderness. And it says, and these are the people that keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. So the identity of the woman and her seed is the church and her converts. Listen, the people that are trying to force this church, this woman in the wilderness to be Israel, I got two things to say for you. They don't have the testimony of Jesus. It can't be them. Number one. And number two, the wilderness where God protected them before is full of their enemies now. There's no more wilderness for them to go to. It is everything is filled with their enemies right now. Everything that touches the border of Israel, even within the land, even the land of Judah itself, is what they're trying to make Palestine. There's nothing more Jewish than Judah. And that's the land they're trying to divide and make Palestine. Okay? And so Zechariah says they fight till Jesus returns. There's no wilderness for them. It's just not. So he tells us who this church is. This woman in the wilderness is, and the remnant of her seed. They're those that keep in the commandments and have the testimony of Jesus. They're the church and the converts. Okay, so we went in the end. If we go back to Revelation 17, look at 12 through 14. And the 10-horned beasts which thou sawest are 10 kings. They received no kingdom, but received power as kings, 1 hour with the beast. These are the prime ministers and presidents, and that's why he's talking about they receive power as kings. And it says, and these have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. So they are completely committed to Satan and Satan's rule. And these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he's Lord of lords, King of kings. And they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. And so there are a remnant that is with him that are chosen, that will be part of this final battle, to rid the world of everything Satan builds in his 3.5 years. Okay? That's all I wanted to share with you. I'll turn it back over to the brother in charge.